Happy Monday, everybody. It's time for another edition of Ask Mike. I'm Courtney Mims. He's Mike Irwin. Mike, you ready to get into some questions?
Sure.
Let's do it. Our first question is from everybody's favorite question asker, or your least favorite question asker in Mousetown. He's actually kind of nice this week, Mike. Mousetown says, I'm going to defend Arkansas's hitters some this week. Florida may have had the worst ERA in the SEC, but the guys I saw on the mound for them looked really good. Still, if Molina had pitched game 3, we would have swept them.
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with him. And, you know, I hadn't watched Florida a lot, and I looked at those numbers, and we were talking about it last week. And, I mean, these guys really stink on the mound. The truth is, you got a lot of freshman pitchers, and apparently they really got bombed early in the year, really just terrorized at some point and lost some games big and midweek games. He pitched some of these guys midweek. They got shelled, but they're getting better. And that's what happens with talent, and that's what the ESPN announcers kept saying, the SEC network analysts kept saying. A lot of these guys are coming around now. They were always talented, but they were just freshmen. And I kept looking at these guys. They kept bringing guys in. It wasn't just the starters, although that game 1 starter was amazing. But you look
with an 18 ERA, to your point.
You look at what they were doing, and you're not seeing walks, a lot of walks. You're not seeing beaning batters. You're not seeing them groove the ball right down the middle. I mean, the ball's dropping on the edges. I mean, they're coming inside on you. They're throwing, and they're really mixing up their pitches. And I didn't feel like Arkansas's problems, especially in that game 1 when they scored just 2 runs. I just felt like they went up against some really good pitchers. So that's misleading. Florida is a weird team. You're talking about a team that got swept by Missouri.
Yeah.
You know, man, they stink. Well, They took 2 of 3 from A&M. Nobody else has done that. Most teams got swept by A&M. They took 2 of 3 from them. They took 2 of 3 from Miami. They took 2 of 3 from some other SEC team, maybe Mississippi State. I mean, they played well at times. So when you look overall at what went on, and like he said, when you consider that Molina didn't pitch at all, I knew that was going to be an issue. Because if you really count the starter, and I know they used him as a midweek starter, but I consider anybody that's not part of the weekend rotation part of the bullpen. I mean, any of those guys can be used in the bullpen. So Arkansas used its bullpen for 13 innings, if you have to count those 9 in that, because you didn't have Molina. So they ran out of pitching there at the end. So I don't fault Arkansas for giving up a lot of runs in that game. I don't think it's a sign the pitching has gone bad. Now their ERA, staff ERA, Arkansas's has gone up over 3. And you're going, whoa, at one time it was 2.5. Well, guess who's second in the ERA in pitching?
Yeah.
A&M.
Yeah.
You know what their ERA is? Almost 4.
Oh,
There's a huge difference between Arkansas and everybody else. The point is the pitching numbers are going up as you get toward the end of the season. Teams are hitting a little better. So Arkansas is still really in good shape with his pitching. The issue is hitting, and we don't know where it's going to go from now to where we get to the really important part where you're playing a regional, playing a super, and trying to get to Omaha. But right now, they lost 1 game, still stayed 1 game ahead of Texas A&M in the West because the Aggies got beat Saturday night. I watched that game, went home, watched that game, picked it up in the bottom of the 8th. A&M was playing Georgia. They were down a run, bottom of the 8th, but they had runners on first and second with nobody out. And I thought, Aggies going to win this game too. They're gonna catch Arkansas in the West. They're going to do it right here. They brought in a reliever, and he struck out all 3 guys in that inning, and then struck out all 3 guys in the next inning. So 6 straight strikeouts. And the Aggies are going, well, what happened? They had the bubble machine going.
Well, now they're claiming that guy cheated as well all over social media.
They showed him what was he doing with his glove?
Yeah, his glove in the bullpen. And
I mean, who knows what he was doing?
I know. I'm just saying. You have Aggie fans all over social media saying he's cheated. But
well, he struck out 6 straight guys. I don't know. Maybe I mean, he had grease on the ball or something.
Yeah, some sort of tack. It kind of, I mean, he kept touching his glove. They're now investigators on this with that same reliever, and they've gone back to other games and highlighted where he's been touching his glove, and
Yeah, so I don't know, they could be in trouble, but the point is they lost that game.
They did.
So
yes.
Arkansas stays a game ahead of the Aggies, and then Kentucky got beat 2 of 3 by South Carolina. That was amazing. So Arkansas at one point was 2 games behind Kentucky for the overall lead. Now they're back even with them again.
Yeah.
But they have to go to Kentucky. So
They do. And to go back to your point, you're absolutely right, Mike. What I said on the batting cleanup show earlier in the week, because I've watched a lot of Florida baseball this year. I have. And so what I've seen from their pitching staff is inconsistencies, but because of the inexperience, because of how young they are. But you look at that Game 1 starter with that 18 ERA coming into that Game 1 with Arkansas, they trusted him because coming out of high school, he was a highly ranked pitcher. But for 2 years, he has dealt with injury. So you really don't know what you're going to get with him because he's still coming back from injury. Doesn't mean he's a bad pitcher. He's probably going to be their Friday night starter moving on through the rest of the year, apparently. If you listen to Kevin O'Sullivan and what Dave Van Horn said, you just didn't know what you were going to get with him.
And Florida still has a chance to really help Arkansas because
they do.
In Gainesville, where they're better, they play both Kentucky and A&M.
And they're still, if you look at Florida's RPI right now, as bad as they've looked over the past couple of weeks, their RPI isn't as bad as you would think it is. I think it's mid-30s, which technically still, that means you're not a terrible team.
They just lost some games they shouldn't have lost, but that's gone now.
Yeah.
And so maybe they'll do some damage here.
We'll see. It will definitely help Arkansas's RPI.
Because I don't think they can get in the NCAA tournament, but maybe if they won those 2 series, it would help.
Yeah, if that RPI goes higher, I mean, that they could absolutely make a case for making the postseason. We'll see, though. We'll absolutely see moving forward. KY Hog says, I'll be holding my breath all weekend. Arkansas versus Kentucky, and I will be there. I'm a huge Hog fan, but I don't see them winning the series or the series at Texas A&M. Sorry, I have to be honest. We don't have the hitting.
Yeah, I don't know. Here's the thing. If you look at those last 2 series that Kentucky's had, they've had pitching problems. They've had big multi-run games that they've given up, including the last game they played. They got run ruled by South Carolina 10-0. So it looks like their hitting's going away a little bit and their pitching's going away a little bit. Now, if they warm back up, Arkansas is going to have a hard time. And then the Aggies thing, I don't know how they're going to win that series because A&M is solid.
You're not very confident about that one.
The Arkansas's pitching could get them through, but again, you've just got some problems right now at the plate, and I'm not sure they can solve. We're going to talk about one of them here in a minute. But
yeah, we're going to talk about one of them for sure in just a second.
They've got some guys that have to get it going at the plate.
They do. And going into this Florida series, we said it on this show last week, I want to know how they do against Florida's pitchers. I really want to know because, and people were ragging on me on social media this week, Mike, for saying, I can't believe they have just 2 hits through, I think it was 7 or 8 innings of that Game 1.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it. And they go, oh, this, our hitting has struggled all year. Our hitting has struggled all year. And I said, yeah, but 2 hits? Come on.
It was bad.
You do better than
but
that.
They did bounce back in those other 2 games, and the point is that their team batting average is back up to, where are they now, 9th? I think
Are they in 9th? I haven't looked at the standings.
Up to 271 or something like that, so they're back up to 9th. Okay. So it's moving back in the other direction a little bit, so we'll see.
Still 9th, though, Mike. Still 9th.
But that's better than 13th.
It is better than 13th. You're right. We teased talking about one of those problem areas, and Clayton Hogg mentions it. He wants to know, at what point is Diggs not in this lineup? He hasn't even been competitive for 2.5 months. You have to get him out of there.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's actually been. I'd have to go look it up.
Well,
but his conference conference batting average is under 200.
Yeah, 190.
So
190.
That's been, how long has conference been going on? Not 2.5 months.
About 2.5 months, right?
So maybe that's what he's talking about. Look, to me, you got to leave him out there because he's just too important in right field. He hasn't made an error.
Hasn't made an error in conference
come
play.
Come on. He's perfect in SEC play. So you need him out there. To me, this is why you have a hitting coach. To me, you got access to all the video of all the games, go by pitch, all of his bats. Look at what did you do wrong here? What happened there? They are pitching him certain ways. Figure it out. What are they doing? What's the strategy? Because I keep seeing the same thing. They're coming inside on him, especially right-handed pitchers are coming in real, and even left-handers are coming around and slipping that thing right in here. Maybe he needs to crowd the plate more where he gets hit. I don't know. I mean, they're coming off. It's real frustrating to watch him because the ball goes right here and he's like, and then it's a strike.
Yeah.
You know, so some of it could be blind umpires. I'm not sure. Well, I mean, seriously.
But to your point, though, that is something that a hitting coach is supposed to look at and work on with them each week. What is wrong? What's going into your at-bats?
Yes, I just think that's the answer. If he was hitting 340 at one point, and he was hitting lots of home runs.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season he was hitting 340. Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something that changed. So look and see what it is.
And overall, I mean, he went down overall. We talked about 190 in SEC, but 245 just overall right now, still worse than 340, what you were doing at the beginning of the season. So,
absolutely.
Axel asked, are the announcers for SEC baseball paid by the network or by the home team school? Some do a pretty decent job, but some are just terrible. I kind of have to agree with this because I had to turn the LSU ones off this week for softball.
Yeah.
They were not good.
The ESPN does provide what's called a stipend for each school. It's a flat fee that they give you, which helps you kind of offset the expenses you have. But basically, the schools are paying for most of this. So you're paying your announcers, but you're also paying your crew, your camera people, your guys that are the guys at the button pusher, the director, the guy that decides what shot goes up on the screen, and all of that. And those button pushers sometimes.
Those button pushers.
Well,
sorry,
look,
that's why you say that.
Look, this is an argument I have with these guys because too many of them clearly are not baseball fans. I think what they are creative guys, and I think they're trying to paint a picture with what they put up on the screen. And it's like, oh, let's show the beautiful mountains over there. Oh, let's show the fans, the kid in the stands that's got the ice cream cone or whatever. They're always wanting to get these so-called, what do they call
they're pretty shots. They're like
there's a name I'm looking for.
Beauty shots.
Beauty shots.
They're always looking for the beauty shot.
So all of that's fine. But a good example is I was watching a game over the weekend, and so the pitcher's in trouble. So the coach comes out, and they're having a conference on the mound, and you never see it. You sort of see him head out, and then you never see him. They just had stupid shots of guys in the dugout looking. I mean, focus on what's going on out there on the mound. He's talking to his pitcher. You might get a clue. He's going to keep him in. He's going to, no, it looks like he's going to go to his bullpen or whatever, but you don't see any of that. And that's the director who's not very good, who doesn't understand baseball and doesn't understand what somebody wants to see, who's what. How many times have you seen a shot from behind the left field fence or behind a total wide shot, and they show the pitch, and you can barely see it?
You can barely see it, yeah.
You know, why? You're taking somebody that has the best seat in the house if you watch TV because you're right behind the pitcher with a telephoto shot that shows exactly what the pitch does with relationship to the home plate and the batter, and that's what you want to see. We're all hooked on that. That's a better view than you're ever going to get at a game. And what do? They take it out of the mix. Why? Because they want to go, hey, that's too much. We're going to show this over here. You should never do that when the pitch. Get your beauty shots or whatever, but show the pitch.
Yeah.
Then they go graphics crazy.
Oh, I know.
Saw one this
Graphics
weekend. This
crazy.
might have been an Arkansas game where they lost a pitch because they put up a bunch of graphics about something that's coming up. I don't care about what's coming up. I don't care what happened about the game before. I'm watching this game, and I want to see what happens in this game.
And you didn't mention this, but what drives me crazy is those in-game interviews.
Yes.
Please stop doing
At
them,
least
for the love of goodness.
If you do an in-game interview, could you talk about the game that's going on instead of something that's already happened, something's going to happen,
right.
Something you did? Oh, yeah, last week I was here and this happened to me and boy, it was really crazy. I mean, tell these stories that no one's interested in.
No, and also you're missing part of the game. Like these guys, when they interview Hagen Smith or Dave Van Horn or whoever it is, Kevin O'Sullivan, and you're missing the game. You're trying to watch the game, and those guys are trying to watch the game.
Yeah, and
it drives me up a wall. I'm like, let them do their job.
Yeah. And then
Right?
when we had this first ever ESPN3 game from North Little Rock, which had never been done before, you and I were really surprised because we turned it on and it was Phil Elson.
It was great. I
They
love
put
Phil
the
Elson,
radio
yeah.
audio on there, and it was amazing how good it was.
Yeah.
Now, I made a bunch of people mad who don't understand.
Well, you wanted Bubba to be there too. You
Yeah,
were just saying
I
you
was just saying I liked the way that worked. I
Yeah.
didn't include Bubba; he just wasn't there. I
But-
didn't say Bubba was bad.
No, but you
everybody
like
starts-
Bubba too. So
Everybody started acting like I was disrespecting Bubba. I didn't say anything about
You-
Bubba. I
we're
was just
setting the
saying,
record
Phil,
straight.
it was good to listen to Phil because he talked about the game itself and not a lot of nonsense about other stuff.
Yeah.
And when Bubba's on there, they do. They talk about that game.
And if Bubba was there, I think it would have been great to just have the radio
I mean,
crew
Bubba's
do it.
good to analyze Kendall Diggs' swing. He can talk about
Exactly.
stuff like that.
Exactly.
So if you've got the right people, but too often on these ESPN3 things, they just go off into left field and it drives you crazy.
It does drive you crazy, and I'm seeing it more and more now that I talk to you, and I go, man, Mike is right. You're starting to bleed into me here, Mike,
Well, I
because
turn
I
the
agree
sound
with
off
you.
90% of the
And
time.
I've done it as well too, just because I just want to listen to the ambiance of the ballpark as well. Just say,
When we first went over to YouTube TV, and you guys got cheap because a bunch of us share it, and so it
We
doesn't
didn't
cost
get
us-
cheap.
Yes,
Hold
you did.
on. We didn't
had
get
4K, and you guys went, "Oh, it's not worth it."
because there's only 2 channels in 4K.
I
They
don't
charge you
care.
like $30 extra
No,
for
it's
it.
not $30.
It's like a lot of money now. They up the prices.
Look, the thing that's great about it is they give you that surround sound audio. And I can work with my mixer and take the announcers almost completely out of it. And I'm
love
just
that.
hearing the sound. It's like being at the game,
Yeah.
but watching the game too, and the picture quality's better. So the first people that figure this out, the network people that figure out that with sports, a lot of people want that. You could save yourself a lot of money. Get rid of the stupid announcers or just have them talk when there's a controversy. Just tell them
Yeah.
to shut up. And
Yeah,
just talk
yeah.
when there's a penalty or you're having to explain something with the referees or a replay or something
Right.
like that. But don't talk when we're just watching the play. I don't need you to tell me, boy, he was really running well on that play. I can see he was. So
No doubt, man.
We've
No
got the
doubt.
surround sound, you know.
Yeah.
If a guy makes a great play in baseball or football or whatever, I can see it. I don't need you to tell me what he did. I saw it.
Coach Cal was back in town over the weekend. Hogs Plus tweeting out this. Coach Cal's first pitch was a perfect strike. Somebody get him a jersey.
Yeah, that was interesting because what was he actually wearing? That same
He's wearing the same quarter zip. The same quarter
that
zip,
he
Mike.
had in the first press conference because he hadn't had time to go buy anything in. I'm all for it, man. He's out recruiting. He can do whatever he wants right now. But they showed a video of him warming up, and he told this one guy, he said, I don't want anybody laughing if I bounce this thing in front of the plate. But he was warming up. He did his job. The guy, who was the guy
I think
that
it was
the
Tate McGuire
yeah,
who
he's
they
not
interviewed.
even really a catcher.
No, he's a pitcher.
So he said, look, he told me to stand up so I'd be a better target. But he said, I had faith in him. He stood up, but he put it right where it needed to be, so it was a legitimate strike. So it was fun. He was there. He was interacting with the fans, and he watched the game with one of the recruits.
It looked like Jonas Adu was
Yeah,
actually
so-
there at the game.
So, I mean, it was good. We're just starting to learn. Cal right now is this behind-the-scene guy that you don't ever see, and there's just rumors about what he's doing. You don't see him. With Musselman, he was always with a guy. How'd you know that? Here he is standing next
because
to this
he was
guy.
a big social media
Here
guy.
he is standing next to that player, and you don't see Cal doing that.
Because he's not a social media guy. He's not a guy that puts himself out there. You heard him in the press conference. He has other people do that for him.
Okay.
Musselman was like a big on the Twitter,
He's
big on
been
the.
very mysterious so far.
That's how he. Apparently, if you talk to, like I talked to former coaches or current coaches, former coaches, that's what they say about him. They're like, he likes to move in the shadows a little bit. He likes to hold his cards close to his chest.
Okay.
So
Well, as
there-
long as he wins, that's what
Hey,
matters.
and that's okay with me. As long as he wins, I don't care what he wears either. I don't care if he comes out there in a polka dot suit, right? I do not care. Former Kentucky player Antonio Burke says, this is why most players love Cal. He gave me over 6 figures once. I got shot and went broke. Paid my bills for up to 6 months too. Yes, we bleed blue, but we're definitely riding with our coach unless we play him.
Okay, this guy played at Memphis for Cal, and then he was later playing for the Memphis Grizzlies when this happened. I guess I still have a hard time figuring this one out. I guess he was in a dice game behind an apartment complex.
Yeah, like out, a duplex.
So I don't know what they were doing there, but they were playing dice, and some guy got mad or came up and decided to rob him. Yeah. He shoots this guy in the stomach. Yeah. And then was going to shoot him in the head, but the gun jammed.
Yeah, the gun jammed.
He said he will remember that guy's face for the rest of his life.
Oh, my
because he thinks it's the last face he's ever going to see. They gave the guy 97 years in prison for doing this. But the point is, this story tells you why these players like him. Don't say, oh, it was an illegal, you can't give players money. He didn't play for him at that point. He was already gone. But the point is, here's an NBA guy, but he had all these bills and apparently didn't have the money, and Cal came in and helped him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're learning more and more about him and learning why players like him, why he's a class guy.
Well, look at the rabbi story. That's another story of how he helped a community that he wasn't directly involved in. And then you look at this story here, and there are other stories. There are so many, but that's why they call him a player's coach. And a lot of people say, oh, he's a player's coach. That doesn't mean that means he doesn't want to win championships. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
He's a player's coach because he does things like this. They are his family. Those are his guys. He will treat them well years and years and years and years to come. And you saw a picture with him and Nick Smith Jr., right?
Yeah.
And he said any former players are welcome. I thought that was great
his
as well.
former players or any of Arkansas.
Or any of Arkansas. I thought that was awesome. So shout out to Coach Cal there. Marty Bird's Proxy asked, how much input will Coach Cal have on this coming season's basketball schedule, or is it already set?
Well, he has no input on the SEC schedule because that's determined by the SEC.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing unsettled there is they still haven't determined which teams place other teams twice as opposed to once.
Right.
And there's a lot of speculation that because of Cal, Arkansas and Kentucky are going to play twice because of the TV draw that would be. But as far as what he put with the schedule in November and December, the tournaments that you end up playing in, where you go, yeah, he has everything to do with that.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of speculation about what they may do. But we should be hearing something on that, you know, not immediately, but not too far in the future, because that's going to be his first, I guess, thing that he does after he gets recruiting, he gets a roster again, is he's got to figure out what the schedule is.
Well, they're already working on scheduling. I mean, they're already working on things like that. That's why Penny Hardaway, you know, saying on his podcast, what I think this past weekend or last week, about wanting to do schedule a Memphis game and get that rolling. So he wouldn't have said that if the schedule was set in stone. But he's also like, I want to talk to Coach Cal about it, and I'm sure they will talk about it and see.
The point is,
if
I
that's
don't think
something
he's
they can
doing
get
a lot of
scheduled.
that right now because he's recruiting.
He definitely has some people working for him in that capacity. I'm sure they are, because there are coaches that will want to reach out about games.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what he ends up doing.
Yeah.
What's the schedule?
Hot Dogger says the NCAA is afraid of getting sued about NIL. Can't they pattern NIL after NFL contracts? The NFL contracts players for money and they don't get sued.
Well, the reason they don't get sued is because they have a players union. And the players union has reps, and they negotiate with the team owners. So everything that the players do in that respect has been submitted to them by the union people, and then they vote. So you're not going to sue if you've approved something. That ought to be, that ought to be a dead-on clue for how you solve this problem on the college level. If you get players in a players union, a college athletes union, then you have your union reps negotiate with the NCAA, and then whatever they propose, you come back and you propose it to the players and they vote on it. And in the end, whatever they decide upon, whatever the two sides agree upon, they've agreed on it. So they're not going to be any lawsuits. And if you approve it, what are you going to do? You can't sue. You're the one that said, I agree with that. So that's the way this gets solved, is whatever proposal by the NCAA to deal with the transfer portal, NIL, the combination of NIL and the transfer portal, whatever they come up with as a solution, if you have players in a players union, you submit it to them and they say, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't like that, try again. At some point, they get some consensus, and then nobody gets sued.
Yeah, I think I think that it's leaning towards going to something like this, right? I mean, they've got to have some sort of rules and regulations.
Except that there's crazy things going on. I read just yesterday that there are groups of people that want to sue the NFL for its draft, saying it's
what?
Yes, saying the draft is discriminatory. That players ought to be allowed to go whatever they ought to be able to go to whatever professional teams they want to go to. If they do that, it's going to eliminate the way the NFL is constructed to make everything even, and then it's all about better coaches and better players
Oh my gosh.
and how you work and all that stuff. Then you're going to get back to what's going on right now. It's going to boil down to money. Now, I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because, again, you can't if players are voting for this, and they have, well, how are you going to make them go, oh, the draft is unfair, we're not going to do that anymore?
Yeah.
They would blow the whole thing up, and it would end up backfiring on them.
That sounds like the college football world right now in the NIL and how it's the wild, wild west and the transfer portal.
There are lawyers behind the scene that make money off this stuff.
Yeah,
So they're going in and, yeah, how about you do this or that? So, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I've always said that it is very difficult. If you're a college player and you have a great career, guess what happens? You're going to go to the worst team in the NFL the higher you're drafted. That's the bad part of it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would ever accept that coming out of high school, being told, hey, we're going to have a draft to make this thing fair.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work on the college level, but it does work in the NFL.
But maybe the contracts, that part of things, maybe if they actually sign them to contracts with salary caps and those sort of things, that is where I could see something happening. But who knows? I mean, there could be a draft if somebody doesn't get a hold of this situation, it's just going to spiral.
I don't think we're ever going to have a draft of high school players.
I don't know. I mean, never say never. I never thought there was going to be.
What if you did this? Just scatter shooting here, but what if you had a draft every year of guys in the portal? Everybody hits the portal.
That's what I was
And they
thinking.
just draft. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll take this guy. No, you take that. That would be interesting.
That would be a very interesting thing. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I know never say never in this world, right? WV Hog fan says, back before the scholarship limit, the larger and richer schools would sign 100-plus top athletes to scholarships in order to keep their competitors from getting the athletes. Today, the richer schools are buying the best players to get the best athletes. Regardless what rules the NCAA proposes, won't the larger, richer schools find a way to continue getting the top athletes?
If they get this settled, which would then allow the NCAA to go back to enforcing its rules, no. There will be schools that will always try to cheat, absolutely. And probably the same schools that have always cheated, and they know who they are. They are the schools that have always been trying to buy a title, and if we get some rules in place that are enforceable, then what will happen is the NCAA will just go back and go after the. Yes, they'll be there. They'll be trying to cheat, and they'll get caught. And if the other problem I had with the NCAA, even before all this, you couldn't enforce your rules, was they were too selective in who they enforced it with. In other words, some schools just get nailed to the wall like SMU. Other schools do virtually the same thing, and they don't get the same punishment. Mm-hmm. So if we ever turn this thing back around where the NCAA can enforce some of these rules, I think the onus is on the NCAA to be better. Do a better job of enforcing the rules equally to everybody. If you know a school is out there cheating, I don't care who it is. It may be Alabama, it may be Georgia, it may be the biggest names, Ohio State or whatever. You just, if you're the head of the NCAA, you tell them, hey, bub, we're zeroing in on you. We know some stuff. You better stop it because we're going to come after you if you don't. So if you ever get to a point where you can do that again, yes, there will be cheating. They will be trying to break the rules, but you can catch them and punish them too.
Yeah, that's in a perfect world, though. And that requires people to kind of be whistleblowers in a sense.
I'm not trying to suggest that everything will be perfect if they come up with a solution. You will still have schools that will try to skirt the rules to win. But if the NCAA does its job correctly and has good investigators, they can stop this. They have just been way too selective in the past about who they go after.
Yeah, and they need someone to point them in a direction as well. That's in years past. That's how people have gotten in trouble when somebody lets it go. Well, guess what? I have evidence of this happening at this school. That's what you kind of look towards.
A lot of times what happens is your own players that you cheated to get turning rat on you.
That's what I'm saying. Somebody rats on them, and that's how it opens an investigation. So you have to would have to happen in your world as well. Mm-hmm. Someone would have to lead them that way. And I don't know. I would hope that more people would come forward, but again, nobody wants to tell on other people.
You might be having to buy those players off, not to tattle on you.
Hey, that could happen too. I hate to say that, but that could happen. Nat Strange 73 says, I'm just going to put this out there. You want dollars for NIL, Arkansas Razorbacks? Put on ladies' clinics, football, basketball, baseball. Never seen one of those. We will bring it. We are Hog fans as well. Just saying.
Okay, there's apparently already a movement to do this. Not done by the athletic department, but done by the collective.
Right, because the athletic department couldn't, if they put it on, if the athletic department puts it on, they can't use that money for NIL.
Right.
Arkansas Edge puts it on, they can use that money for NIL. So Arkansas Edge, in response to this tweet, Chris, who runs Arkansas Edge, said that's a great idea. And then Sydney, who works with Arkansas Edge as well, former Arkansas gymnast, she also responded with, I have been working on this. I'm trying to get this to happen.
So it's an interesting concept.
It absolutely is. But I think Natalie is totally right. And then I know Natalie very well, and Suzanne has been trying to get this to happen much, much more. She's even gone to Hunter Yurachek and said, Hunter Yurachek, please make this happen. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, they have done.
They have had camps before, but it wasn't to raise NIL money because, as you say, they couldn't use it for that purpose.
Right, but they have had these clinics before, just in years past, right, for these ladies' clinics. So, and Coach Cal's wife seems to be somebody who would want to do it. I think she did a basketball ladies' clinic in Kentucky.
So get ready for it because it's coming.
It's coming. We love it. Top Hog 19 wants to know, and we get this question all the time, Mike. Why does Mike Neighbors still have a job? He has lost all his best players. Why does he have such a big buyout? He hasn't won an NCAA tournament game in 7 years here. We may save money on buyout, but at what cost to the fan base and ticket sales?
Well, the first mistake in what's posted there is the assumption that if you got rid of him, you would suddenly make a lot more money in ticket sales. I've watched ticket sales in women's basketball for a lot of years. Gary Blair, arguably the best women's coach Arkansas has ever had, he got the attendance up to around 7,000 for SEC games. What's it now, about 3?
Yeah, maybe less than that.
2 to 3?
It's probably 3.
So you can make some extra money. That's not a lot of money, I'm just telling you. So let's say he decided to get rid of Mike Neighbors as soon as the season was over. Okay, what's it going to cost you to get somebody that can come in and win like that? Because if you don't win like that, you're not making a lot of extra money. I will also say this. Women's fans who go to women's games tend to go regardless. I don't see with the men, when the men's team started losing, the crowds just went to nothing.
Yeah, they did.
The women's crowds are always pretty much the same. I don't think they're people that go, oh, this is a terrible season, I'm not going anymore. They just go. They tend to be less oriented toward losing, winning, and all that. They're just going to watch it. Yes, they want you to win, but they're not. The fans that go to the women's basketball games are not people that tend to go, I'm not going anymore, they stink. They still come. So in order to make extra money, which is what he's suggesting, you'd have to make sure that you got somebody that was not just winning some games. They'd have to, I believe if you were top 3 in the SEC, if you were competing maybe for a national championship, where fans thought you had a chance to win a national championship, it might be possible to raise that attendance up to 7,000, 8,000, and then you make some extra money. But then you're paying extra money for that coach. Mm-hmm. That's the way it goes. Now, so why didn't they get rid of him? Look, he's in the same situation that Sam Pittman is in. If you're not paying any attention, when Hunter Yurachek was hired, he made some statements about big buyouts, that he didn't believe in them. that when he made a contract with a coach, he tended to want to do a performance-based contract. I'm not paying you to come in here and lose. I'm not going to give you a contract that rewards you when you lose. I'll give you one that rewards you if you win. And then he didn't do it because when he gave Sam Pittman that huge buyout, then he's suddenly stuck. But I think he learned his lesson, and what he was saying is, I'm going to let this contract basically run till it's down to nothing. And then if we have to replace him, we will, but I'm not going to have paid a huge buyout. I think he's had the same attitude about Mike Neighbors. I'm not going to pay him a lot of money. We're going to let him go another year in which his buyout drops way down, and then if he doesn't turn it around, then we'll make a change there. But here's the difference. Sam Pittman has NIL money, and he's used that NIL money really well. Look what they've done. Rebuilt the offensive line. It's almost brand new. Okay, he got a new quarterback, somebody they didn't have before, and their other quarterback leaves, which turned out to be, in my opinion, a good thing, and they brought in a very exciting young quarterback that Petrino wanted. So he's got a new offensive coordinator, he's got his defensive coordinator. They just lost Snacks, a really good player. Why? Because another guy they brought in out of the portal beat him out. So you're improving your team through the portal with NIL money, okay? How's Neighbors supposed to do that? How? He doesn't have any.
If you don't have NIL money, you can't, because you're competing with Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, who have NIL money. Newsflash, guys, those programs have NIL money for women's basketball. That's what we're looking at, Mike.
But Arkansas is spending its NIL money on football, basketball, and I think Dave Van Horn's probably generating his own NIL. I think he's got enough people that support Razorback.
I don't think baseball has as much NIL as people would think they do.
But I think what he's got from people that are loyal to baseball.
I'm sure, yeah.
The rest of them, come on. Right now, that's the focus. You got to get our football team winning again, and got to make sure basketball jumps up now with Cal. And until that happens, but now if you're a women's sports fan, there's relief on the way, I promise you. Because one of the things that's happening behind the scenes is there's several lawsuits that have been filed, Title IX type of lawsuits with regard to NIL. They're not going to be able to get away with this much longer. Schools who say, okay, we're spending all this on football, basketball, but we don't have much for women. You're going to have to spend the same amount if it's a collective. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
And that's part of what's going to happen if they create this super division, is everybody's paying the same amount of NIL collective. So it's all the same, and that will eliminate some of this cheating and recruiting. So with that, the women, it may be a year or two down the road, they're going to get the same amount. Now, you're still going to have you'll still have probably an ability to hire yourself an agent, but I hope that out of this comes some sort of, and I don't know how you would control this, but something that says, yes, you can hire an agent, but it has to be a true NIL that you're doing. It's not some stupid thing where I'm a quarterback and you wanted me really bad, so I'm on a commercial about a hospital or something, and I don't really do them much good. That was clearly done by a booster. A booster paid for this to do. I don't know how you eliminate that. But to me, a true NIL through an agent for an athlete is somebody that can really do some good for that company by doing his name, image, and likeness for that company.
But you have to look and say, how can you prove that? It's the same thing I said on the show last week, Mike. How can you prove that? Because if I'm a booster, here's what I'm doing. I'm asking, I'm paying money to whichever athlete I want to get, and then I'm saying do something for my company.
Maybe the NIL, which is done through your agent, can't be given by a booster.
Okay.
It has to be somebody that's not a booster.
Well, yeah, but then you're restricting what boosters can do. Then they give it the booster goes to the corporation and goes, here, I'm giving you $1 million to use Taylor Green for your commercials.
Yeah, to me, I hope I'm not saying that if you're Arch Manning and you got this $2 million with Texas, I'm not saying you can't do that, but I'm saying there ought to be a real NIL value to that. In other words, you're not just giving him that money because he's Arch Manning.
Right, he ought to be doing something for it, right? But and the argument is that I bet if you went and said, what does Arch Manning do for that money, and somebody asked you to prove it, they would come up with different ways. They'd go, look, he did this and this and this for us. And they would come up with it. It's the same thing I said last week, Mike. It's going to be really hard to prove that. It's a perfect. It is a great.
I think if they form this union, and everybody votes, and everybody agrees, the schools say, look, we got to eliminate a guy getting $3 million just because he's a good player. You know, we don't mind him getting $200,000 or $150,000, but this outrageous difference between what most of these athletes are going to get, $30,000 from the collective, it creates problems when one guy's making 20 times more than they are.
But unless they turn around and say, like you said,
but what if they all agree to that?
But then what's to stop a booster or a company going, can I pay him for his name, image, and likeness?
What I'm saying is they come through some sort of an arrangement where it's a true NIL. He's actually providing that value to a company.
Right,
and there's ways they could get lawyers involved. But the point is they could come out with something which they've all agreed to. The players' unions have the athletes' unions, not just players like men, because you got men and women's scholarships. So the athletes' union agrees, yeah, we agree to this, and then it's enforceable.
I just think it's going to be really hard to prove it. If I'm a booster, I could go to a company and say, hey, put him in your commercials.
If you can't somehow prevent that, you've got an issue.
Because
I'm telling you, you can't have an athlete getting $30,000 a year and there's another guy or another woman on that gymnastics team or whatever team it is, and you're getting $30,000 and they're getting $2.5 million. Yeah. It just causes issues.
It does, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know what the solution is to proving those things, because I think you're going to have people who are sneaky, like they are.
Then you've got a rule, and if they're sneaky, you catch them and bust them.
Well, how are you going to catch them if you can't prove that they're?
They can get lawyers involved. They can write it into a contract, and they all agree to it, and then it's there, and then it's up to the NCAA to enforce it.
We'll see. I just don't think you can prove, if I turn around and say, I have $1 million, I want to pay for this athlete to be in my commercial. Why are you going to tell me I can't pay them $1 million for them to be in my commercial?
I think they can come up with some parameters that you would have to prove. You would have to prove he adds that much value to your company.
Oh, he does. He absolutely does. So we can prove that.
You got to prove it. And not
we can
with
prove
phony
it.
numbers.
Oh, we can prove it then. How do you know they're going to be phony numbers?
Because
this is what I'm saying.
You can look into it.
No, Mike, I'm telling you, if I want to pay $1 million for an athlete to be in my commercial, I can do that.
If you do that, let's see if your revenue goes up.
Okay.
Let's see if your revenue goes up.
But you could do that with any star. You could pay for, I don't know, Sydney Sweeney to be in your commercial, right? Or you could pay for, I don't know, Antonio Banderas to be in your commercial. You still pay them to be in the commercial, whether or not your income goes up or not.
You'd be stupid to do it if they don't help your company make extra money.
But look at advertising. That's exactly what the gamble you play in advertising is.
I'm just telling you, there are ways you can check.
Okay.
You gave this guy $2.5 million. Your revenue didn't go up one bit. We know what you're doing there.
Okay, but they could say, they could play devil's advocate and say, but I thought it would. Yeah. I really thought it would.
Okay, well now you can't do it again next year.
Oh, well then that's telling me what I can or can't do with my money, and then I'm taking you to court.
No, you can't, because the players' union's already agreed to it.
We'll see about it. I think this is an interesting argument. We're going around in circles and we're running out of time. Want to get to the last question, which is from Eddie Lynn, who asked, what do they put in the water at Greenwood? I'm a Texas boy, never been to Greenwood, but that place keeps cranking out top quality Razorbacks. The latest Peyton Holt with his rope-a-dope catch in center field. I love it. Got him a Gator, Courtney. He did got him a Gator. And I was just as shocked as Kevin O'Sullivan.
There's a name for what he did. I've forgotten what it is.
A deke? He deked him.
He deked him. But I like rope-a-dope better, because that's exactly what happened.
Rope-a-dope. That's funny.
That's exactly what happened. And the great thing about it was, he said, look, we work on that. You don't just do that in any situation. If the ball's too close to you and you try to do that, you might drop it.
Yeah.
So you have to time it perfectly. You have to decide when you really want to do it. And I've never seen it done in a game before, so it's got to be pretty rare.
Yeah,
but he pulled it off. Tremendous publicity. It was on SportsCenter.
Number one play, too.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Greenwood just keeps cranking these guys out. And they keep coming up on the hill. So we got to have a reason. We got to convince Greenwood Don't send your guys anywhere else. Just send them to the hill. We'll take them.
We're actually working on a couple of stories, and we can plug this now because you brought it up. We're actually working on a story series about the pipeline of athletes to Arkansas from Greenwood and what they're doing. I promise you, it's not something they put in the water, but we might find that out. But we're doing a story on those athletes that come here and why Greenwood, being, you know, a small place in Arkansas, can develop such great athletes. I think it'll be kind of a fun story series. So
yeah.
we'll plug that. And we'll plug Jacob's story on Peyton Holt. You can go see that on our YouTube right now. He gave me a thumbs up there from behind the camera.
It was a good story. I saw it yesterday.
It was a great story. So go watch that if you haven't seen that already. But that's going to do it for Ask Mike this week. We'll see you next Monday to answer more of your questions.